2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Mazlberg.
There's an issue that I want to discuss with you, which is very, very troubling indeed. A couple days ago, yesterday, New Yorkers woke up and to two huge white flags up on the rafters of the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, there had been two American flags up there. What these white flags were apparently American flags that had been painted over white. I don't think they were the same flags that were just painted over. So flags were removed and white flags. What does white signify? Or what does a white flag signify? It signifies surrender. Okay? I heard John Miller, who used to be a reporter, used to work for CBS, used to be counterterrorism in LA, now he's counterterrorism here in New York. I respect him greatly, saying that, well, this was yesterday. They were going over security cameras to see who it might have been and blah, 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 and no terrorism is expected to be involved. You're telling me that someone went up, people went up to the top of the Brooklyn Bridge for hours to change the flags, and now we're going to look at the cameras to see what happened? How about stopping them? I know it was the middle of the night, but what's to stop them from lacing the bridge with explosives? Now, we know we had a little kid, who went by security weeks or months ago up to the top of the World Trade Center, the new World Trade Center. One security guard was sleeping, one he snuck in past. What's going on here with our security system? In New York City, at landmarks, at terror targets, the Brooklyn Bridge? Are you kidding me? We need answers. Who did this? Why? And we got to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Where is the president on this? This is a persecution of Christians who predate the Muslims by 600 years in the Middle East. These people in Mosul were there before there was Islam, in the same way that the Jews of Baghdad, who were about a third of the population in the late 40s, were expelled, who were there 1,000 years before that. This is the exclusivity of this kind of radicalism. Where's the president? He talked about how disrespectful we were to Muslims in many of his speeches. Where is he standing up for the Christian minorities in Egypt, in Lebanon, in Palestine, among other places in the West Bank, and now in Iraq?
Well, that's a darn good question, one we've been asking for a long time, and I know Brigitte Gabriel, our next guest, president of Act for America and author of They Must Be Stopped, Why We Must Defeat Radical Islam and How We Could Do It. Brigitte, great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, I want to start. We had a representative of the Iraqi Christians yesterday, and this is such a great tragedy. It's a genocide, really, and you know what's going on in Mosul and what's been going on throughout the Middle East, as described by Charles Krauthammer, and throughout parts of Africa for so long. And our president, I've never heard him say boo about the slaughter of Christians anywhere.
Nothing, and it is heartbreaking, Steve, especially for someone like me who comes from the Middle East, who's a Christian who's been persecuted simply because I was born into the Christian faith. That's how I ended up in America. This is something I detail in my book that goes back hundreds of years of persecution of Christians in the Middle East. And it is not only right now in Iraq, it's been happening to the Christians in Lebanon. Look at the Christians in the Palestinian territory. Since the Oslo Accord in Bethlehem, the cradle of Christianity. When the Oslo Accord was signed in 1993, Bethlehem used to be 80% Christians. Today, they are less than 6%. And that's in the holiest city for Christianity. Christians are being driven out of the Middle East by the Muslim majority. And America, as the superpower of the world, as the biggest Christian nation in the world, with a president that doesn't care, is not making any statement or taking a strong stand on the protection of Christians. And he has a lot of sway. I mean, look, especially in Iraq, America went and many people died, and we sent our military there. We spent billions of dollars. And now this is what's happening to the Christians in Iraq, and the story goes on for all throughout the Middle East.
Yeah, it really is disgusting. It really is, and it's incumbent upon this administration to speak out. It's also incumbent upon the Christian world to speak out. And to be quite honest, Brigitte, as I said to my guest yesterday, as I've said to Bill Donahue, the head of the Catholic League, etc., I just don't see the worldwide outrage over this. And why do we not hear more from Christian groups and and sects, denominations all over the world? Why not?
This is a question I have been asking Steve over and over again. And I have to tell you, I even met with some pastors here in the United States, evangelical pastors who are pastors of churches that have a minimum of 5,000 members plus, one of those mega churches. And I said to them, why don't you stand up for the Christians? Look what's happening to the Christians, to the Coptic Christians in Egypt. And this goes back a few years ago, even before the Muslim Brotherhood took over Egypt, 4 years ago. And I said, you stand up for Israel. I was actually speaking at a night to honor Israel. And I said, as much as the Christian community in the United States is gathered together to stand with the state of Israel, it is just as important that we don't forget about the Christians of the Middle East. And unfortunately, the Christian churches, especially the mega churches in America, are not sending missions to check on the Christians in the Middle East. If anybody is checking, it's actually the Catholic Church. But here's the problem. The Catholic Church and the Episcopalians have been very much influenced by the Palestinians with their talking points against, Israel is the aggressor. You need to see what's happening to the Palestinians, and they are taking on the Palestinian cause. And that's why they're not really strongly coming out in condemning the Islamic treatment of Christians in the Middle East, because they are afraid of retaliation, considering they go there, they have outreach there, they have the mosques and the churches and the monasteries there, and they are afraid of Islamic retaliation against the nuns and the priests, which have been done in the past as well. I mean, look what the Muslims, the Palestinians, did to the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem during the 40-day siege of the Church of the Nativity. What did the Christian church do? Yeah. What did the Pope do? Nothing has been done.
Yeah. All right, let's quickly turn to Hamas here. And again, our government's reaction to the whole situation in Israel. The president and John Kerry insisting on a ceasefire when Israel has a lot more work to do. And the tactics of Hamas. We have reports from soldiers in the field calling home and saying they're using kids and babies as they come at us with rifles, or they're having kids shoot at us while they come at us at the same time. The world wants to remain blind to these tactics.
And they are tactics of war that the Palestinians have perfected over the last few decades. I, as a child, and my background, Steve, I was raised in a bomb shelter in Lebanon, and I personally was used as a human shield when our town fell in the hands of the Palestinians in 75, 76, back in Lebanon. They used to park their rocket launcher in front of my bomb shelter, where we were 3 families hiding in the bomb shelter, and we were 9 children. And they would park their cannon in front of our bomb shelter to launch rockets at Israel, and that's to the northern border of Israel back then, knowing that Israel is going to retaliate, and if we die, we will be the evening news, and we will create such backlash against Israel. I mean, my mother went out begging the Palestinian leader to move his cannon, telling him that we have 9 children in the bomb shelter, and he almost shot her for standing in front of him. This has been a tactic that has been used by the Palestinians and perfected for the last 30, 40 years. Yep. The world needs to understand that the Palestinians put their children in front of them. They hide behind their children. And Israel is fighting such a difficult war. And we cannot blame Israel for wanting to defend itself. And we must understand that the enemy that is now fighting Israel is such a dirty enemy, plays such dirty tricks. They don't care about their own children. Listen, they send their children to blow themselves up as suicide bombers. Right. But that's the reality of the enemy that we are dealing with. Not only in Israel. This is not only a Hamas-Israel problem. They have used these tactics also against us throughout the world in committing terrorist attacks.
Brigitte, I want you to hear, I want the people to hear you at a Heritage Foundation roundtable talking about Benghazi. You were answering this Muslim woman who asked a question. She brought the Muslim issue into it all. And you were brilliant because she talked about what about the good Muslims? And you went on and on. I want people to hear some of what you had to say.
When you look at Russia, most Russians were peaceful as well. Yet the Russians were able to kill 20 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at China, for example, most Chinese were peaceful as well. Yet the Chinese were able to kill 70 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Japan prior to World War II, most Japanese were peaceful as well. Yet Japan was able to butcher its way across Southeast Asia, killing 12 million people, mostly killed with bayonets and shovels. The peaceful majority were irrelevant.
And then you talk about how it took 17 hijackers to do the damage they did on 9/11. That was just a brilliant analogy of an analysis of the situation, I should say, that I hadn't heard presented in that way ever before.
And that is a very important point, Steve, because I added also, look at the United States. On September 11th, we had 2.3 million Arab Muslims living in the United States. It took only 19 hijackers to bring America down to its knees, kill almost 3,000 Americans, destroy the World Trade Center, and attack the Pentagon. The peaceful majority in the United States on that day were irrelevant. So this is why we must identify the enemy and throw political correctness in the garbage. Look what happened in New York today on the bridge. How did they climb up and hang a white flag? And whoever made it to the top of the bridge, if they can hang a flag, they can place a bomb.
That's exactly what I heard John Miller, who's in charge of terrorism in this city, who I have great respect for, say, you know, we're looking at the videos to see. Well, looking at the videos, we had a kid get up to the top of the World Trade Center. Now we have people climbing the top of the Brooklyn Bridge, spending hours up there. We're sitting ducks. Hey, Brigitte, thank you so much. Keep up the great work, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you, and we want people to go to actforamerica.org and join us. Thank you.
Actforamerica.org, absolutely. Brigitte Gabriel, folks. She is quite a lady, quite a lady. All right, when we come back, the Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies and columnist for National Review, Mark Krikorian, will be here. Don't you go away on the Steve Mazlberg Show on Newsmax Television.